Father, thank you for the opportunity to share this message with my brothers and sisters, to share what you've been doing in my life these past 10 years, and just your faithfulness in my life and in everyone's life here. And we just pray, God, we know, God, that you are still working and that you will continue to work in us and through us to accomplish your purpose here in this world. And so we thank you and pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Oh, by the way, I forgot. Do we have any veterans? Anybody who's a veteran here? No? Nobody. Okay. Just one. Oh, really? What is your name? Robin? And where did you serve? In the Navy? Are you still in the Navy now? No? But you used to be. Oh, Robin, let's give him a hand. Awesome, amazing. Thank you for serving our country. Thank you for your service, Robin. We're so glad you can visit and worship with us today. Okay, so the message I'll be sharing with you guys today, it'll be kind of a short message. It'll be more like a testimony of what's going on in my life. And it's also it's also a rehash of a message that I gave over 10 years ago. So if you were here that long, like 10 years ago, and it sounds kind of familiar, I apologize, but it has been updated, and it's related to what's going on right now in my life. And it's kind of interesting where God has brought me to this point. So I just want to share with you guys that, oh, by the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm a part-time pastor here. So I'm also an attorney, and I work in the weekdays. And this past week, something happened that was very unexpected. I actually had a job interview, and it doesn't by the way, it doesn't affect anything that I do here on the weekends, okay? It doesn't change anything. But anyway, so I had a job interview this past week, and it was totally unexpected. It was a friend of mine who worked for an organization called CAST, and CAST stands for the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking. And so she calls me. She's like, hey, you know what? We have an opening for a staff position. And so do you want to apply? I'm like, wait, you want me to apply for this position? I just started a new job like 3 months ago. I'm doing corporate litigation during the weekdays. And so you want me to apply? She says, yeah, just apply and just see what happens. So I said, okay, I'll sure, fine. So I threw together my resume again and just sent it off. And they called me to an interview like this past week. And so I went to the interview, and it was a good interview, very interesting, and I learned a lot about organization, but I don't know whether this is the first round of the interview, so they're supposed to let me know this coming week whether I will make it to the next round. But one of the issues, it was a good interview, and they really liked me, but a big issue that they had with me that they've never encountered before was that I'm a pastor who serves on the weekends. And so that was my condition. I told them, you know, whatever, if I do take this position, if you do hire me for this position, I'm sorry, on the weekends, I'm a pastor, and I need to preach on Sunday, and I need to do stuff on Saturdays, Friday night. So you guys need to, work with that somehow. And so they're like, she just like, my interview, like, we never met anybody like you before. I will have to discuss this, and we will have to see. And so that was, that was the thing. So I don't know whether they're going to call me back or not. But I just thought it was very interesting that it had to do with human trafficking, because 10 years ago, that was kind of how my whole journey started. I never expected to go to interview for CAST. Okay, but so what I do now is, what CAST does a lot is T visas. If you don't know anything about, I'm an immigration lawyer. So what a T visa is it's a visa that we give to the United States of America. It's a humanitarian visa we give to human trafficking victims that are often trafficked and brought in illegally from third world countries, from, for instance, like villages in China where there isn't a lot of education and people are very poor. And so they would bring these girls in from overseas, different parts of Asia, Africa, Europe, wherever. And they would promise them, oh, we're going to help you get an education, we're going to give you a job. But it's all fake, and it's basically done by organized crime. And so they come to the United States, and then tell them, okay, now you have no choice, you have to work as a prostitute, basically. And so they force them to work as prostitutes, and they threaten them. They say, oh, you owe us, it costs us like $100,000 to bring you in, so you have to work it off. And they would say, oh, if you run away, we're gonna report you to the police, they're gonna arrest you, or we're gonna do something worse to your family back in China, we're gonna kill them, we're gonna take your little sister, we're gonna bring her here and do the same thing to you, so they'll threaten them in that way. And so they would feel like they have no choice but to keep doing what the traffickers want them to do. But what the T visa does is we give them a humanitarian visa so that they become legal, so they don't have to stay and do what the traffickers want them to do, so they can come out from that industry and go to school, get a job, those types of things. And so I'm actually doing one of those right now for a client, and because of confidentiality, I can't really say anything, tell you guys her story, but it could be a movie, basically. It's like basically a movie. But any case, so that's what's been going on with me. And so 10 years ago, how did this start with me? 10 years ago, this was about 2008, 2009. I was serving here as a full-time pastor. I was in charge of student ministries and young adults, and having a really good time. EFCLA is a good church, good resources, financially stable, and a lot of gifted people. And so I was having a great time, having fun. This was our Sisters Appreciation that we did in 2009. Actually, Sean is right here. Elder Sean. He's right here. I'm right there. This was our grad night that we had 2009 for those who are graduating from junior high school, and college. Worship team, nothing has really changed. I still do that with Joel, right? This is a young adult group. We went snowboarding one time. So I was having a great time, enjoying myself as a pastor, as a full-time pastor here at EFCLA. Oh, by the way, this is this room. See, it's like looking down that way. We had curtains. We had curtains, before the shades, and we had built these paper walls along the sides here, attached to these two poles right here. So that's what that is. Yeah. So it was fun. I was enjoying myself. And then all of a sudden, one day in 2009, I get a call. And this was a very kind of a secretive call. Basically, they said they were with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They were a law enforcement group with the Department of Homeland Security. They asked me if I'm willing to volunteer as a translator, as a Mandarin language translator for a law enforcement operation. And they wouldn't tell me anything else besides that, right? And so they called our church, actually, because we're one of the larger churches in the area. They called our church, and they called Vicky at first, and so they were asking for an English translator, so she just transferred it to me, basically. So that's why I got the call. And so I said, oh, sure. Yeah, I'm willing to do whatever I can. And so they wouldn't tell me anything about what was going on, what I was going to do. All they said was, we want you to meet someone at some address at a certain time and a certain date. And that's all they wanted to that's all they were going to tell me. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm willing to do that. And so I go to the address. This was during the early days of GPS, so I had GPS, right? So I do the GPS, and the GPS takes me to Monterey Park, to basically what ended up being a Starbucks, okay? This was in the afternoon, so around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, I just went to the Starbucks there, and I just sat there, and I basically waited, because I didn't know, what's going on. So it's kind of like Spy, Cloak and Dagger. It's kind of exciting, like, hey, I'm going to do something, but I don't know what. Somebody's going to meet me. It has to do with law enforcement. And so I go there. I'm sitting at Starbucks, and I'm waiting a couple hours. And finally, this person comes to meet me, and she's like, are you Eddie's son? I was like, yeah. Okay, oh, no, nobody came. I got a phone call. That's right. I'm sorry. I got a phone call. And so they're like, is this Eddie's son? Yes. Okay, can you now go to this other address? I'm not going to tell you what this address is, but can you go to this address now? And so I'm like, okay. And so I do the GPS again. And so this is around 6 o'clock at night. And so I drive to the address, and it turns out to be the Monterey Park Police Station. Okay. So it's the Monterey Park Police Station. And so I get out, and I'm like looking around, and then so. And I go to the office, and they're like, just wait outside. I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do? So I'm standing outside, and then eventually these cars start showing up. These cars start coming to and parking in the parking lot. People start coming out, and they start like opening their trunks, and they start like dressing up in SWAT gear, like this, okay? They start dressing up like this. And then these black SUVs start coming, and then people start coming out in these SWAT gear, and they start putting on like body armor and helmets, and they start taking out machine guns and shotguns, and I was still like looking like, okay, I was thinking, okay, so this is probably some kind of sting operation, probably some kind of human trafficking sting operation. So I'm gonna be like, they're gonna bring like the victims here to the station, and I'm going to like be here, and translate for them. So that's what I was thinking, right? And so they're like putting on their guns and their SWAT gear, and this one guy has one of these things, like a battering ram, and then some other guy has a huge crowbar that's like goes up to here, and he's like conk, conk, like it's like steel, like this thick around a crowbar, and then the director of the Homeland Security comes, and then she comes and she kind of talks to me, tells me like basically, like, this is what they're going to do, and then some of the commanders are there, and they're kind of talking. And so the whole time I'm still thinking I'm just going to wait here at the station, right? And then afterwards, after a couple hours, they're all dressed up. Everyone looks like that, okay? And so they're all dressed up, and around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, they said, okay, let's go. And so they tell me to basically follow them, like in my car. And so I'm like, you want me to follow you in your car, in my car? I was like, yeah, okay. And so they go, they have a police car in front, like, and then they have these like 3 or 4 black SUVs, like suburban SUVs, in a line, and my car behind them, and a police car in the back. And they start like tearing down Atlantic, from Monterey Park up Atlantic, like blowing through all the lights, like police sirens, and I'm here like in my car, like trying to follow the black SUV in front of me. And so like we blow through all the lights, go up Atlantic, over and then to Alhambra, and then turn left, and then they all like get out, and they say, okay, you stay here and wait. And so I park my car, I watch. Like they all get into this like V formation, like one guy in the front and one guy behind him like this, and one guy behind him like this. So like a V, and they like run off into the dark, right? Into this condo, and this condo is like, that's a nice looking condo. It's a nice house. It's really nice. It looks like a very nice neighborhood. And so they go there, and it's at night, so it's dark. I don't see much. I just see them like run off into the dark, and then I see like yelling, and I see flashlights like going, because they all have flashlights in front of their guns, right? So so they see flashlights going like this, and then I see flashlights going up into the house, like through the windows, like flashlights, like everywhere. And then all the lights turn on, and I'm still watching from the outside. And after like an hour, I get a call. Okay, you can come in. So I said, okay, I could come in. So I go into the house. And it's kind of crazy because they bust down the door. So you see the door is like all splintered. They came in, and I saw and inside the house, they were going after the human traffickers to arrest them, but they weren't there. But there were two girls there, and they were like basically high school age, and they looked just like. I mean, I was expecting like human trafficking victims to look like prostitutes, right? Well, you would imagine somebody with heavy makeup and like revealing clothes, but they were like high school kids, and so it was like, wow, it was very mind blowing to me, and it made a pretty big impact on me at that point. And so I was like, wow, I never knew that this was going on. And so I did a sermon sermon series based on this, and this what I'm sure is part of that. So prostitution rings in San Gabriel Valley run by the Asian mafia and different ethnic mafia, trafficking girls out of their whatever country that they had come from. And then I did some more research, and I learned that it's not just sex slavery, it's even just labor itself. And this was a sweatshop that was down the street from this church, like in El Monte, okay? In the late 1990s, there were these Thai women who were trafficked in from Thailand and forced to work in this garment factory. And people would look at this garment factory, and they would wonder why the fences and the barbed wire were not pointing outward. Usually, like the barbed wire fences would point outward so that the people cannot, robbers can't climb in. But all the barbed wire was pointing inward. And so they were, didn't figure out why it was like that until they realized it was reported, and there was a sting that there's these women who were there basically working in sweatshops, working and living in this place, not getting paid anything, because basically the traffickers would say, oh, you owe us like this much money because we brought you in, so now you have to pay it off by working. So that's how they would get them to work. And this was in El Monte. And so we talked about, we often talk about slavery in terms of history, things that happened in the past, in terms of, the Egyptians and the Hebrew slaves in the book of Exodus. We talk about slavery in terms of African slaves being brought here to the United States to work in the cotton industry in the early United States. But we don't realize that actually, if you want to talk about slavery, right now in our modern day today is the slavery industry at its highest, and that today there are more slaves than any time in history of the world, the civilized world. And so 10 years ago, after that happened to me, I had a dream. And this was the dream that I was asking God, wow, God, what do you want me to do with this? I'm having a good time, and all of a sudden you show me this, and is there something that I feel like I need to do something, but what is it that you want me to do about this? And so from time to time I have a lot of dreams. I have very vivid dreams, but once in a while I'll have a dream, like once in a very long time I'll have a dream that I'll feel like this isn't just a dream. This is like something prophetic that God is giving to me, kind of like in the Bible times. Once in a while I have one of those dreams. Once in a long while I have one of those dreams. An example would be one time I had a dream that I was surrounded by sharks, and I was underwater, and these sharks were swimming around me, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to get eaten by the sharks. And all of a sudden these sharks turn towards me, and they all rush at me, and they start biting me, but none of them had any teeth. It was all like gums. And so I was like, oh, none of these sharks have teeth. Oh, I'm safe. So that was, for me, that was a way that God was showing me. During that time, I felt like I was surrounded by enemies, and I was really scared and worried. But there was God showing me, no, you don't have to be afraid. So that was an example of another dream that I had a long time ago. But for this time, I had a dream about going back to school. And the school looked kind of like Hogwarts, like Harry Potter and Harry Potter. So that looked kind of cool. I am a Harry Potter fan, but I knew that this wasn't just a dream about I wished I was in Hogwarts at Harry Potter's. I felt like this was law school, and the guy was calling me to go to law school. And I actually shared this with the pastoral staff. And interesting thing was, E-Ray was with me in that dream. I don't know why. Maybe he should have gone to law school too. I don't know. He missed the boat on this one. But anyways, so I had this dream, and I felt like, okay, it's time to go back to law school. But it's time to go to law school. I've always been interested in law. Before I decided to go to seminary, become a pastor, I was actually trying to decide, should I go to law school or should I go to seminary? Because I was always interested in law. And so during that time, back then, I picked seminary, never thinking that, maybe law school would be something else in the future. But so I went to seminary, became a pastor, and then this happened, and I started thinking about law school again. But there were a lot of obstacles and challenges, partly because I'm like much older, and finances is another issue. And can we afford to do it? Because law school is very expensive. And can I also learn all this new stuff? At my older age, it's harder to learn stuff. My memory is not as good. Location, I'm not going to move away. I can't go somewhere else. My choices are very limited to this geographic location where I can commute to go there. But one by one, God basically opened the door, one by one. Right? We were at a point in which, the LSAT was a huge issue. I just thought, well, God, I was just praying at that time, if this is real, if you want me to go to law school and do something, become a lawyer and do something like this, then you basically have to open the door. I don't know how I'm going to do this, so you have to open the door. So the first hurdle was the LSAT, so I just said, okay, the LSAT is very difficult. The LSAT is the law school admissions test. And so I thought, I'll take the LSAT and we'll see what happens. So I didn't have that much time to prepare for it, but I did my best. I took it, and my score was high enough to go to law school. So I applied for law school thinking, you know what? Whatever I apply to, it's going to be around this area, and I'm going to have to afford it. If I can't afford it, then there's no way, I know it's not you, right? So I applied. I got into a law school in this area, and they gave me a scholarship, a huge scholarship. And so that I could afford it, and it was in this area. And so I took this step forward in faith and went, surrounded by 20-year-olds, kind of like the way it is now, where I'm working now. Surrounded by 20-year-olds, studying law, and it was not easy. And the bar exam, you guys know what I had to go through to go to the law, take the bar exam multiple times. It was the hardest professional exam in the United States, in any state, California bar exam. Pass rate about 35 to 40%. And so I took it many times. And then you guys were here, right? Many times I wanted to quit and just like, forget it, God, this is not you. This is probably not you, you didn't meant for me to do this, but brothers and sisters would encourage me, take it again. So I did it again and finally passed. And in 2017, usually the results of the exam will come out on a Friday night at 6 o'clock. So for multiple times, Friday night, 6 o'clock, I'll be in front of the computer, check my results. Oh, time to go to church. And then you guys would see me, right? Oh, I'll curl up in the ball on the couch over there. Comfort me. Oh, it's okay. But 2017, I got it. I was like, and it says I passed. I'm like, what? Are you sure? Basically, it doesn't say you passed. It just says your number is on this list. And so I was like, are you sure? And I couldn't believe it. And I printed out the list and I brought it to church that Friday night. And I was like, look, is this real? Can you tell me this is my number? Are you sure? Can you tell me? And then I bought Vietnamese sandwiches to share with, to celebrate with everyone. And also with the young adults, we celebrated with a lunch at Jeremy's place. So one big hurdle out of the way. started working. Not sure, at that point, I'm still not sure, like, God, what do you want me to do now? I'm a lawyer and I'm a pastor. So what is it that you want me to do with this now, with my life? And so I started working in immigration law at the LA County Bar Association Immigration Legal Assistant Project. It's to help low income and like pro bono and very low cost legal aid, immigration aid to different clients. And I learned all about immigration law and became knowledgeable about this area, this particular area, and then started my law firm, the Law Office of Eddie Sun, doing immigration law, doing some T visas, you know, and then 4 months ago started working for a corporate law firm in downtown LA. Some of you guys came to visit Friday night, and I thought, okay, you know, this is what I'll be doing. I'll be doing this corporate law and then this immigration thing on the side, and then all of a sudden I get, you know, this cast thing. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, whether they're going to actually hire me or not. Being a pastor, not able to go work on the weekends. Each cast staff attorney gets about 50 cases. So it's a lot of work. And so I don't know. We'll see where God leads with that. So I've asked for you to pray for me. I don't know exactly what God's plan is for me. So if you could please pray for me about this, that God's will be done in this. So some facts about human trafficking. I had to update some of these facts because it was 10 years ago, right? So human trafficking is the world's third largest criminal enterprise after drugs and weapons. So a lot of people thought gangsters and the mafia, they like traffic drugs mainly, but now it's actually much more profitable and safer for them to traffic human beings than to traffic drugs. So now trafficking is you know, pretty high up there, right after drugs and weapons. So worldwide, there are nearly 2 million children in the commercial sex trade. There are estimated 600 to 800,000 children, women, and men trafficked across international borders annually. Approximately 80% of trafficking victims are women and girls. Up to 50% are minors. The total market value of illicit human trafficking is estimated to be in excess of $32 billion. This was when I first preached this sermon in 2009. Now it's $150 billion in 2018. 27 million men, now that was 2009, 2018, now it's 30 million men, women, and children are held as slaves. Globally, the average cost of a slave is $90. That's how much it costs to buy a human being, $90, right? The average age of a teen enters into the sex trade in the US is 12 to 14 years old. California harbors 3 of the FBI's 13 highest child, excuse me, 13 highest child sex trafficking areas on the nation. And let me get a water, hold on. I'm doing what Jackie did last week. Okay. So what is our mission? What is my role in the mission of Jesus Christ to bring justice to the earth in light of all those facts that we just saw? And as a church of Jesus Christ, what is our role? What is my role in the mission of Jesus Christ to bring justice to the earth? So that's why I'm sharing with you this brief passage from the book of Isaiah. Book of Isaiah. This is a prophet in the Old Testament time, and he was basically facing a lot of the same issues that we are facing with today, the injustices that were happening in the world. And so this is a painting of the prophet Isaiah, and he lived during the time in which there was a lot of the Babylonians had invaded Israel and carried off a lot of people into slavery. And a lot of really bad things were happening in the nation of Israel at that time. His name, Isaiah, in Hebrew means Yahweh saves, the Lord saves. He was also a lawyer as well as a prophet. If you studied the book of Isaiah in the original Hebrew, you will see that the book of Isaiah was written very much like a legal brief. So it's very legal in its language. And he was the one, if you're not familiar with the prophet Isaiah, he was the one who saw a vision of God sitting on the throne, and there were these seraphs, these angels surrounding God, singing, "Holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory." And Isaiah responded by saying, "Woe to me, I am ruined, for I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." And the Lord takes, one of the angels picks up a coal from the altar and touches it to his lips and purifies his lips. And God calls out, "Who shall I send, and who will go for us?" And then Isaiah says, "Here I am, send me." And so he was sent to prophesy to the nation of Judah. And yeah, he spent 3 years as a nudist. It's kind of weird, but basically, this is unknown, not very well-known fact about Isaiah. Basically, God sent him to Judah, and people were like, "Yeah, whatever, I don't care." And so he was trying to preach, and people weren't paying attention to him. So God says, "Take off all your clothes." What? Take off all your clothes and preach naked, walk around naked. And so that's what he did. Not a very well-known fact, but that's what it took for people to like, "What? Why is this naked guy walking around?" So that's what happened to him. So, okay, he's asking himself the same questions that we were asking, and during a time which the Jerusalem, the temple were being destroyed, and people were taken away off to exile in Babylon. In Isaiah 41, there were poor and needy people who were searching for water, but there is none. But instead of trying to help those who were needy in the nation of Israel, they were exploiting one another. It became like an every man for himself kind of situation. Like you got invaded, and now instead of banding together and helping those people and like being on the same team, they were like, "No, man, it's every man for himself," kind of like the zombie apocalypse. Like, I'm hoarding all the stuff for myself and trying to exploit and cheat other people and fighting against one another, seeing each other as adversaries and competitors rather than seeing each other as, being on the same team, in the same family. And so how did the Lord respond to the people in Judah at that time? He says, "Is this not the kind of fasting I have chosen?" The people of Judah, they were still going through their religious rituals. Like, they were still going to the temple, even though it was destroyed. And they were still, like, fasting and doing all the religious ceremonies and stuff. And then God says to them, "Is this the kind of fasting that I've chosen? Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free, to break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe him, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood." This is what God is saying to them, right? You know what? You guys are doing all this religious stuff, but you are just doing it for yourself. You're not doing any of this to help all the people around you that are in need, those who are in bondage, those who are hungry, those who are poor, right? This is what I really want you to do. I want you to help these people who are in need. And so the dilemma we face oftentimes, we know this, right? We know this as a church, we know this, and we're doing everything we can in our church to try to help people. A lot of our budget goes to our missions department, to short-term missions. We go to Taiwan to go to missions to help those kids who are in bondage of idolatry. We support missionaries that go to all different parts of the world. We have this mission to go to help the Syrian refugees down in the San Diego County. So we talk about that. We just had our missions conference last month. And so as a church, we're trying to do all these things, but oftentimes we can look at all the need around us and just feel overwhelmed and not know, like, how can I, as one person, make even a tiny little dent in all the needs that are around us? Right? How can we as a church, EFCLA, how can we even make a tiny little dent in terms of the millions of people who are enslaved? All the human trafficking that in this community and all around the world. What can we possibly do to make any difference in light of this huge and pressing need? And this is where Isaiah, earlier in chapter 42, talks about the starting point of justice. Where does justice start? In 42, the prophet Isaiah gives the prophecy of the coming of the Messiah, of Jesus Christ. 42, this is a prophecy of Jesus Christ, whom is called the servant of the Lord. And Isaiah 42:1 says this. This is God speaking. In light of all the injustices that Isaiah and the people of Judah and the whole world is facing, God says, "Here is my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations." Okay, do you see that? It is not you will bring justice to the nations. It is he will bring justice to the nations. The Messiah will bring justice. And Isaiah 42 verse 2 says, "He will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice." Again, he's pointing to the Messiah, to Jesus Christ. This is the starting point of justice in the entire world and throughout all of history. Whether it's for the adulterous woman when Jesus met the adulterous woman, or the self-righteous Pharisees, this is Jesus Christ's mission. In 42, Isaiah continues, "He will not falter or be discouraged." When we face all these things going on around us and all the different needs and working day after day tirelessly trying to share the gospel, trying to share God's love to people, and sometimes it doesn't really seem to make a difference at all whatsoever, right? It doesn't seem to make any kind of little dent in what we're trying to accomplish day by day, week by week. We come here to church, we serve, we do what we can to share the gospel with people, to bring justice, to bring the light of God's word to people. And sometimes it doesn't seem like we're doing much at all. But in Isaiah 42, he will not falter or be discouraged. Jesus, he's the one who will not get discouraged until he establishes justice on the earth. In his law, the islands will put their hope. In the Old Testament times, when they talk about islands, it's usually not a happy thing, right? Today, in the modern times, when we talk about islands, we think about like Hawaii and going on vacation in the Bahamas. But back in the old and the ancient days, an island was very isolated. An island was a place where you put prisoners, those people who would be in bondage, and that's Alcatraz, right, which is an island prison. And so Isaiah is saying that those who are in bondage will put their hope not in people, but in the Messiah, the servant of the Lord. And so this is the heart of the gospel message, right? Psalm 92, verse 2. Psalm 97, verse 2 says, "Justice, righteousness, and justice are the foundation of his throne." And when Jesus came to the earth and died on the cross, he made a full provision of justice for his people, the church. But yet, for the entire world, when he comes again, this justice will be fully manifest in every aspect of the earth, among all the nations of this world. And this is what he is working towards and he will not falter. He will not be discouraged. And he does not ask us as his people to shoulder all the burdens of the world upon our shoulders, because it is his burden. And he only asks us to come alongside of him, to do what we can day to day in our small ways, to point people towards Christ and so that they can put their hope in him. And so this is John 3:16. This is the heart of the gospel message. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but give eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. In Luke 4, this is Jesus speaking about his own message. He's quoting from Isaiah, the book of Isaiah. He's talking about his own mission in the world. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And so this is the conclusion of my message, is that the starting point of dealing with justice, whether it's, whatever it may be in the world, is the cross of Jesus Christ. It is the injustice that man has committed against God. And so this is what God has called us to do. And this is why I will always be a pastor. No matter what happens in the future, whether I start working with CAST or I'm still doing my own thing and doing the corporate litigation, whatever it may be, I will always be a pastor. The gospel will always be my primary purpose. But it doesn't just apply to me. It applies to every single person here. Whatever job you may be doing, our first and foremost purpose is to come alongside of Jesus Christ and to work with him to bring justice to this earth. All right, I'm going to ask the worship team to come up and ushers to come forward, and we're going to take offering. And if you can bow and pray with me. Father, we thank you, God, that you're so great and you're so awesome. And every week we come here to worship you, to remind ourselves of that fact. Not just to express how we feel about you, but to remind ourselves how great, how awesome you are. And to keep our focus on you and not on the circumstances that surround us. To draw our strength from you and not to shoulder all the burdens on our own. And we thank you for that and that great hope that we have in you. That one day every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that you are Lord and God. And we lift up this offering to you as well, Lord. May it be used for your glory and for your kingdom's sake to bring forth justice to this earth. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Let's respond with Christ be all around me. Let's stand. As I rise,
strength of God, go before, lift me up as I wake.
be all around us, every single one of us, as we go from here. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Praying in Jesus' name.